Okay, so you want to play with fire ants? Let me tell you, it's like finding out your wife is having an inappropriate relationship with a bookmaker. It's dangerous, chaotic, and kind of addicting. I know, because I'm a tough guy, not easily swayed, trust me. My name is Tyler. I'm 37, 198 pounds, 6'3" with the physique of a rock. I can lift 2 gallons of water over my head without breaking a sweat. A professional boxer, I'm not just strong physically, but have a mental discipline forged from childhood. With 5 knockouts in the welterweight division, I'm the kind of guy that makes other fighters nervous. I didn't get into boxing because I loved the crowd or the spotlight. No, it was a place to release my inner demons, to let myself explode. People always called me a quiet guy, reserved, emotionally distant, but the ring was where I felt truly alive. My grandpa, a former boxing coach, trained me from a young age like I was a warhorse. I almost gave up many times, my body screaming in pain, but then Conor McGregor, my idol, the crazy undefeated guy, would pop up on TV and I'd push myself further. If he could fight the world, why couldn't I? My grandpa used to say, it's not just your strength, but your mind that makes you a powerful weapon. And that's why I don't react the way people expect. I'm not the type who goes home, yells, or smashes things when discovering my wife's fishy relationship with a bookmaker. That's not my style. Crystal, a name as bright as she was. Back then, I used to call her my precious gem, and she was a shining star in the storm. But life isn't always as glittery as its name suggests. Crystal was a top model until a scandal hit her, a rigged competition. So instead of fighting back, she chose to leave the glamorous world. She knew whatever she said, whatever proof she had, would be like a double-edged sword against online trolls. The truth is, gossip can destroy a person faster than any punch I've thrown. Crystal started to avoid all attention, all rumors. Even when dressed modestly, she was always targeted, ridiculed. She even got egged on her way out of her house. And that's how fate brought her to me. I was on my weekend run, following my training schedule, enjoying the cool breeze when bam, an egg hit my head, splattering all over my hair. Damn it, I swore, instinctively wiping my head. The smell and sticky goo made me furious. I turned around, but only saw a group of laughing people disappearing into the distance. I was about to chase them down, but stopped when I saw a woman standing nearby, the target of that egg attack. Crystal, I didn't know her name, then stood there, breathless, her face flushed but still trying to manage a weak smile, as she walked towards me. "I'm sorry, and thank you for saving me," she said, making me feel a little confused. I didn't know what I just saved her from, but in that moment, our story began with such a bizarre incident. After the egg incident, Crystal and I started getting closer, and after a while we decided to get married. The wedding was lavish, as expected from a former model. The church was dazzling, white flowers stretched from the entrance to the altar. The press was everywhere, capturing every happy moment. News spread instantly with shocking headlines. Professional boxer marries scandal hit beauty queen. At first, I didn't care. Public opinions never swayed me, and I thought Crystal was the same. But I was wrong. She started spending hours online, reading every hateful comment. So people called her a gold digger, a husband stealer, and even worse. Crystal, always strong, was starting to crumble under the cruel words. I saw her force a smile, but it wasn't as bright as before. One night, she broke down in tears after reading a barrage of negative comments. "Enough," I said, losing my cool. Seeing the woman I loved hurt by the meaningless words of anonymous trolls, I decided to take action. It didn't take long for me to organize a press conference. Standing before dozens of journalists, I didn't bother to sweet talk or explain. I declared plainly, if anyone spreads false rumors about my wife, they'll get a free ticket to a punch from me. It wasn't an empty threat. I didn't like violence outside the ring, but insulting Crystal, the woman I loved and protected, was unacceptable. Back in the real world, I'm in the training room, where the smell of sweat and the sound of muscles clashing is the familiar soundtrack. So every day is the same training, perfecting my skills, pushing myself beyond my limits. So at the corner of the room, Edwin, my coach, who's more like a brother to me, stands with a group of fighters I call the weaklings. Don't get me wrong, they might be big, with muscles as strong as mine, but compared to what I've seen in the ring, they're just puppies playing around rather than real fighters. Every time I suggest sparring with them to sharpen my skills, they all back down, running away like they're being challenged to a fight with a monster. So I'm focused on the punching bag in front of me, throwing accurate and powerful punches when Edwin approaches. He's always the one pushing me, not just in my career but in how I face life. A true big brother, always knowing how to apply pressure where it's needed. "Tyler," he says, his voice deep but familiar. "There's a tournament coming up. Fighters from all over the world will participate. All tough guys. Are you in?" I stop punching, turn to face him, shrugging nonchalantly. "Do I have a choice? You always make decisions before asking me. Let me guess, you already signed me up, right?" Edwin laughs, but it's not a nervous laugh of someone caught red-handed. He slaps my back hard, making me take a step back from the force. "Yes, I signed you up. We can't miss this opportunity, can we? It's for your fame, buddy. Go get him, you'll do great." I sigh, knowing this is Edwin's way. He always sees my potential even before I do. For fame, I repeat, emphasizing each word, but in my head, I'm thinking about the endless battles and the pressure of the title I have to face. Edwin leaves after his words, leaving me with my thoughts and the punching bag. Even though I sometimes don't want to step into the ring anymore, I have to admit, every time I face a new opponent, the blood in me boils like it did in the early days. Not for the money, not for the fame, but simply for one thing: I want to prove I'm still standing strong through it all. "This fight will be interesting," I mutter to myself, then continue throwing powerful punches at the punching bag, preparing for what's to come. I'm still throwing powerful punches at the punching bag, feeling each hit resonate through my gloves as I push my body to its limits. Sweat drips down, but my focus isn't broken. Suddenly, I hear soft footsteps approaching, an unusual sound amidst the heavy noises of the gym. Turning around, I see Bonnie, the most scrawny guy amongst the weaklings. He's only 131 pounds, a body like a stick, literally. Bonnie is 26 years old, not young to start, but he doesn't seem bothered by it. "Tyler, I want you to train me," Bonnie says, his voice serious but filled with determination. I look him up and down, then chuckle. "Bonnie, you look like a twig. You know that, right? When I don't mean to offend, but honestly, this ring could seriously hurt you. You should pick a better path." Bonnie doesn't flinch. He looks straight into my eyes, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not giving up. I have to become a fighter, someone I can be proud of, like you." I raise an eyebrow, surprised by Bonnie's steadfastness. Sometimes the smallest guys have the biggest spirits. But saying is easy, doing is hard. "All right," I say, giving a challenging smile. "If you can take 3 punches from me, I'll share my training methods with you." Bonnie nods instantly, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. The others in the gym start buzzing, disbelief that Bonnie would dare challenge me like that. Some guys even raise their eyebrows, sneering, but they're probably also surprised by his courage. Bonnie and I step into the ring, putting on our gloves and necessary protective gear. Bonnie takes a fighting stance, fists held cautiously, but his lack of confidence and experience is more evident than ever. I look at him, feeling somewhat exasperated, but still maintaining my composure. Before starting, I turn around, grab a helmet from the side, and walk towards him. "Bonnie," I say, my voice gentle but firm, "I think you should wear this on your head. It might keep you safer." Bonnie furrows his brow, the feeling of humiliation evident on his face. "I don't need that. I won't run," he says, refusing to wear the helmet. I shrug, saying nothing more. "All right," I reply, "but remember my words, 3 punches." The sparring begins. I move lightly around Bonnie, gauging and assessing his every move. He tries to hold his stance, but the tension on his face becomes more evident as I get closer. I throw my first punch across to his midsection. Bonnie tries to block it, but the force of the punch sends him staggering back a few steps. He remains standing, but barely, just enough to avoid falling. I take another step forward, not stopping, ready to deliver the second punch. Whispers rise around me, and the eyes of the others in the room never leave the ring. Everyone's waiting to see how long Bonnie can hold out. "How about it, Bonnie?" I ask, looking at him with a mocking smile. "Ready for another." Bonnie clenches his fists, his breathing heavy, but his eyes are still filled with determination. "I'm fine," he assures me, though the first punch left him staggering. He steps into his stance, raising his arm to shield himself, preparing for the next one. I look at Bonnie, shrug with a challenging grin. "Sure," I reply, still maintaining a slight smile on my lips. If he wants to continue, I won't stop him. But this time I decide to use only 3% of my strength, enough to test his limits without causing serious injury. I move gracefully, step forward, and throw the second punch, this time straight to the middle of Bonnie's defensive arm. Bam! The impact sounds loud and clear. Bonnie brings his hand up to block, but in that instant, I hear a clear crack from his wrist. Bonnie's face pales, his eyes widening. "Oh no," he mumbles, looking down at his hand with a look of terror. His wrist is in pain, severely affected by the punch. I immediately stop, walk closer, my gaze shifting from mockery to concern. "Bonnie, are you all right?" I ask, though I already know the answer. He clutches his wrist, his face contorting with pain. But the most impressive thing is that he still doesn't want to give up. I'm fine, I'll keep going." I cross my arms, shaking my head. "No, Bonnie, let's stop here. You did well, but now's not the time to be stubborn. You don't have to prove anything anymore." Bonnie bites his lip, his face filled with disappointment, but eventually he relaxes and nods, letting out a sigh. I look at him, a young man with big dreams, but sometimes too much courage isn't a good thing. After stopping the sparring with Bonnie, I step out of the ring, grab my water bottle and towel from the bag beside me. The cool water flows down my throat, soothing the heat rising from my body. I take the towel to wipe the sweat from my face, letting out a sigh of relief. Just then, I hear hurried footsteps from behind. Before I can turn around, I see Edwin, my coach, striding towards me, his face fiery. "Tyler, what in the world were you doing?" he yells, his eyes sparkling like they're on fire. I look at Edwin, raising my head from the water bottle, saying nothing. He continues, his voice getting increasingly harsh. "You actually bullied Bonnie? Do you know how thin that kid is? Come on, you punched him and his wrist is messed up." I just shrug, rolling my eyes in annoyance. He wanted to test himself. I used the minimum amount of force. It was his decision, not me forcing him, I reply, my voice calm as usual. "Nothing to make a fuss about. Bonnie willingly stepped into the ring, and he did better than I expected." But Edwin doesn't seem to cool down. "The kid just started. You can't treat him like a professional boxer. You know how powerful you are. Be responsible." I sigh, feeling this conversation isn't going anywhere. I'm used to Edwin scolding whenever he thinks I've been too rough on someone in the gym. Actually, I don't need him to remind me of my strength. I know I can cause damage if I don't control myself, but I'm disciplined, and I only used a fraction of my power. It's just a situation that wasn't planned. Frustrated, I pick up my bag, ready to leave the gym. "Listen, Edwin," I say, my voice calm but firm. "Bonnie knows what he's doing. I just gave him a reality check. If he can't stand strong in the ring, he'll be knocked out early." Edwin calls out after me as I step out the door. "Tyler, don't just walk away while I'm talking." But I don't stop. Even though Edwin has good intentions, sometimes he just makes everything more complicated than it needs to be. I need some space to think and breathe. With my bag on my shoulder, I leave the gym, leaving Edwin's calls behind. Driving home, I try to forget all the frustrations from the gym. Edwin always has good intentions, but sometimes he makes me so mad. The drive home is fairly quiet. The trees lining the driveway help to cool me down, making me feel more relaxed. As the car turns into the driveway, I immediately see Crystal, my wife, hanging clothes outside. This scene, though seemingly simple, always brings me peace. Crystal, in casual clothes, her long hair tied back neatly, is shaking the just-washed clothes, hanging them on each drying rack. Moments like these make it easy for me to shed my annoyance. I step out of the car, heading towards her. "Hey babe," I say, deliberately making my voice softer. Crystal raises her head, giving a bright smile, her face lit up. "You're back? How was your day?" she asks, her eyes still fixed on the clothes hanging on the line, but her gentle voice melts away all my annoyance. I shrug, replying casually. "Just another day," I say, but then immediately correct myself when I see Crystal. "But everything's normal when I see you." Crystal chuckles softly, but before she can say anything, I decide to act first. With a swift movement, I step closer, wrap my arms around her like she's a lightweight bag. "Tyler," she exclaims in surprise, her hands waving in the air, trying to reach the clothes she just hung. "Let me take you down, you still have a bunch of clothes to hang." Crystal laughs while protesting, but there's no real resistance in her words. I laugh loudly, walking straight into the house, leaving the clothes outside. "I need some stress relief right now," I say, my voice deep and playful. Crystal continues, pretending to object, but I know she doesn't mind. She's the one who helps me release all the tension after a long day. and today is no exception. Crossing the threshold, I slam the door shut, carrying all the weariness and frustration of the day, leaving it behind. In this house, it's just me, Crystal, and moments more precious than anything else. The next morning, I return to the gym as usual. The fresh and quiet air of the morning always helps me get ready for a long day sweating in the ring. But as soon as I step inside, I realize something's different. Not the usual quietness of the gym, but a buzzing excitement from my fellow fighters. They're gathered in groups, whispering and gossiping about some important figure. Edwin approaches with a slightly tense smile, and before I can ask, he pats my shoulder. "Tyler, get ready. You're going to meet someone special today." I raise an eyebrow in question, then look towards a man in a sleek suit entering the gym. He strides in with confidence, the air of someone who doesn't like to lose, and the crowd around him silently parts to let him through. This guy clearly doesn't belong here. Expensive suits aren't something we fighters wear, especially when surrounded by the smell of sweat and the sound of punches against the punching bag. Edwin lowers his voice, whispering, "This is Hugo, the wealthy bookmaker and big-time investor who bought you for the upcoming fight. This guy bet a huge fortune on you." I glance at Hugo, whom my fellow fighters are admiring immensely. Their eyes sparkle with envy, as if standing before this rich guy is a golden opportunity. But I just walk towards him coolly, not very interested in the show. Hugo extends his hand, smiling a little too broadly. "Tyler, it's an honor to meet you. You have no idea how much hope I've put in you. This upcoming fight will be a big boom, and trust me, I made a wise decision choosing you." He starts rambling about investment projects, strategies, and a ton of things I don't care about. He talks so much that I have to restrain myself from rolling my eyes to show my boredom. "Honestly, I can't afford to lose this fight. I've put a fortune on you, but you're sure to make me proud, right?" I only respond with a lukewarm handshake, my eyes lacking much emotion. "Yeah, we'll see," I say curtly, not caring at all about the fortune Hugo is flaunting. He continues rambling about his foresight, about profitable investments, and about how he built his betting empire. But it all sounds like meaningless noise in my ears. I don't even bother to respond with more words. Not wanting to waste more time, I walk past Hugo nonchalantly, leaving him with a look of disbelief. I'm too used to people like him, people who always think money and power can buy everything. But in the ring, money doesn't help when you face someone who wants to beat you. And I'm a fighter, not a pawn for them to play with. It stands there, confused and embarrassed, but I don't care. I walk to my training corner, put on my headphones, and start focusing on the new day. This is where I belong, the quietness and the sound of breathing and punches, not the empty words of a rich guy. 3 weeks later, time flies by like a breeze. Training has been exhilarating as the fight day approaches. I've immersed myself in each exercise, each punch becoming more powerful, each weight lift getting heavier. Maybe partly because I've waited so long that I want to rush into the fight, facing those I hope will be worthy opponents. That night, Crystal and I pack our clothes into a suitcase, getting ready to travel to the city where I'll be fighting. Before that, I had to work hard to convince her to come along. Crystal isn't very interested in my fights, especially those that involve traveling away from home. But after much begging, I finally persuaded her with a joke. "I won't be able to sleep without your presence." Crystal just laughed, shrugged helplessly, and nodded in agreement. We book a hotel in the heart of the city to stay for a few days while I fight. Crystal loves the spacious and airy hotel room, but she can't hide her anxiety whenever she sees me preparing. As for me, I feel my excitement growing. And then, the fight day arrives. I want to know about my performance in the fight. Well, it was pretty alright. Actually, it wasn't just alright. I handled it quite easily. Hugo, the clown who bet a lot of money on me, must be grinning from ear to ear. He made a hefty profit from gambling, and I'm sure it was a win he saw coming. As for the fight itself, I stepped into the arena hoping for tough opponents. Looking around, there were a few guys who looked intimidating, fierce with scarred faces, constantly boasting that they'd teach me a lesson. I have to admit, I was quite excited. It had been a long time since I felt I had worthy opponents, and hopefully this time I'd meet some guys who were worth testing myself against. But then, disappointingly, everything turned into a joke. I only needed one hit, one punch, and they went down, unable to get back up. Even the referee seemed relaxed, as counting was too easy. Every time he started counting, he'd just get to one and the fight would be over. So when the fight ended, I realized it was just a small competition, not what I'd hoped for. No tough fights, no real challenge. If I'd known, I probably would have refused to participate in the first place, to avoid wasting time and energy on something unworthy. But oh well, at least I helped Hugo win big, and more importantly, Crystal was there with me. After the fight, I returned to the backstage, feeling relieved that everything was over, even though the fight didn't leave any impression. Not long after, Crystal came over, her gentle smile calming me instantly. "Are you all right?" she asked, her eyes worried but filled with love. I chuckled softly, pulling her into my arms. "I'm okay, but I don't think this fight is worth remembering." Crystal chuckled softly, nodding. "Yeah, I saw. You did well, but it seemed a little too easy, right?" We were having our private moment, just the two of us chatting after the fight. But before I could say anything else, a loud voice rang out behind us. The clown Hugo, along with Edwin, walked over with big smiles to congratulate me. "Tyler, congratulations. You're even better than we expected." Hugo laughed loudly, slapping my back like someone overly excited about a big gambling win. Crystal stood beside me, and I don't know how, but Hugo suddenly shifted his attention to her. And who's this? Such a beautiful lady beside our #1 fighter? Before I could react, Hugo quickly moved forward, took Crystal's hand, and kissed her knuckles as if it were a polite gentleman's greeting. Crystal looked flustered, her eyes wide with surprise, not knowing what to do. Instantly, I felt the blood rush to my head, my gaze turning icy. The entire room seemed to go silent for a moment. Hugo realized something was off, quickly putting his hands up in surrender, saying in a distressed tone, Oh, I didn't know. What a misunderstanding, just a misunderstanding. I didn't know she was your wife, Tyler. I didn't mean anything by it." Edwin, standing beside him, chimed in, trying to ease the situation. "Tyler, no need to be tense. Hugo just likes to play around. Calm down." I clenched my fists, feeling the rage rising. If Crystal hadn't been there, I probably would have punched that clown in the face. But instead of acting on instinct, I took a deep breath, keeping my cool. Crystal looked at me with apprehension, as if she feared I'd do something irreversible. "We're going," I said, my voice cold, not needing a response. Holding Crystal's hand tightly, I led her away, leaving Hugo standing there, confused. The days after the fight, I spent time in the glamorous city with Crystal. We strolled through the bustling streets, explored exciting places, and enjoyed delicious foods we'd never tried before. So with my partner by my side, everything felt peaceful and meaningful. Just seeing Crystal smile whenever she turned to look at me made all my worries disappear. Being with her, even simple life became a luxurious form of happiness. When we were satisfied with our explorations, we decided to return to our city. As soon as we got home, before I could even take my shoes off, I saw my boys, the weaklings, as I call them, standing by the gate, holding fruit baskets. They gathered in front of the house with excited expressions, even calling me brother-in-law and Crystal's sister-in-law, making me feel uncomfortable. I don't know since when I became their brother-in-law. Despite the slight annoyance, I still tried to be polite, opening the gate and inviting them in. "Come in, don't stand there all day," I said, my voice indifferent, still wanting to enjoy a little peace and quiet after our vacation with Crystal. But soon enough, the nuisance began. As soon as they stepped inside, they started chattering non-stop about the fight I'd just won, which was obviously easy for me. The fight was shown on TV, and they talked about it as if it were a legendary battle. "Brother-in-law, that punch of yours was legendary," Kelvin exclaimed, his eyes shining brightly. "We told each other that you'd knock out your opponent in just a few seconds." Carl chimed in, his face full of excitement. They talked so much that I started to get a headache. I tried to endure, but at some point I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop it," I said, putting both hands over my ears, "you're too loud." Crystal was in the kitchen at this point, preparing refreshments and snacks for my boys. She didn't notice the atmosphere in the living room becoming suffocating for me. One of them, Kelvin, even dared to ask brother-in-law, the fight was so epic, "Are you going to treat us to a meal?" I glared at Kelvin, then turned to Carl, who was also eagerly awaiting the answer. No treats," I replied coldly. Before they could say anything else, I kicked them all out of the house decisively. "Get out, go home, no party." They were surprised, but they had to reluctantly leave, each holding their fruit basket as they walked out the door, their faces drooping as if they had lost money. I closed the door, sighing in relief that I had finally regained my peace and quiet. Just then, Crystal walked out from the kitchen, carrying a tray of refreshments and glasses. She looked around the living room, slightly raising her eyebrows in surprise. "Where did everyone go?" she asked, clearly not yet realizing that I had kicked the kids out. I just shrugged, smiling slightly. "Oh, they said they had something to do, so they left," I replied, trying to sound indifferent as if nothing had happened. Crystal smiled, setting the tray down on the table. She didn't ask any further questions, and I knew that sometimes maintaining a little peace is the best way to sustain happiness. Ever since that meeting at the fight, Hugo's been clinging to me like a shadow. He's constantly trying to entice me to do more deals, as if the easy win wasn't enough to satisfy his greedy pockets. Things got even worse when I discovered that he controlled me even more tightly than my coach, Edwin. It turns out Edwin had signed a contract with Hugo, a fact I was completely unaware of. In the agreement, if I refused to participate in future fights, Edwin would have to pay a large sum. Edwin came to me every day, begging, trying to persuade me. He said that Hugo had great potential and could bring me many opportunities, but all those words just made me more annoyed. "Tyler, you have to understand we can't miss this opportunity," Edwin said, his face filled with worry. "If you refuse, I'll lose everything. Hugo has invested a lot, and the compensation is beyond my means." I just stood there, looking at Edwin with cold eyes. I knew he was in a difficult position, and I understood that he had no other choice. But that doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. Finally, after hours of arguing and persuasion, I reluctantly agreed. "All right," I said, my voice stiff but filled with a sense of boredom. "I'll do it, but don't expect me to be happy about it." The days that followed, I had to dive back into training, but this time with frustration and boredom. I felt like nothing more than an ox, breaking my back to earn money, while Hugo was always by my side, constantly whispering sweet nothings in my ear. "Just follow me," he said, his voice smug. "You'll see how quickly the road to success opens up. Money, fame, all of it will be yours. You have potential, Tyler, and I'll help you realize it." I just kept quiet, refusing to respond to his empty words. The money earned from these fights was split evenly, but the feeling of dissatisfaction was constantly gnawing at me. Yes, I was making money, but the price I paid was my freedom and self-respect. Hugo was confident that the path he laid out was a shortcut to success, but for me, it was just a trap. A trap that if I wasn't careful, I wouldn't be able to escape. But because of Edwin and a sense of obligation, I gritted my teeth and continued, even though my heart wasn't in it. The training days passed in a heavy silence. Even though I didn't want to admit it, I was deeply involved in Hugo's game and the fights he orchestrated. Sometimes, during those tense times, Crystal would come to the gym. She brought homemade cookies, both to encourage me and to share with everyone. She always knew how to make me feel less stressed, even if it was just a little bit amidst the pressure I was carrying. It was the same that day. Crystal arrived with a box of cookies in her hand and a gentle smile on her lips. "I brought some cookies for you and everyone," she said, placing the box on the table. "Take a break and have some." I felt Hugo's eyes on me from behind, always watching Crystal's every move. He tried to appear polite, but the smugness in the way he stood, chest puffed out, as if he were the one to be proud of in this room, annoyed me. It was like a sloth, usually just lying or sitting around giving directions, but now he was trying to act like a successful and powerful figure in the world of fighters. "Tyler," Hugo called out loudly, approaching. 2 weeks from now there's a big fight. I guarantee the opponent this time will be much tougher. Get ready, because it won't be easy like before." I glanced at him, half-heartedly, but what made me more annoyed was that he turned to look at Crystal, raising an eyebrow as if contemplating something. "What do you think, Tyler?" he asked, his voice dragging. "Are you going to bring Crystal along? It seems she's always by your side." I frowned, clearly not understanding why Hugo brought Crystal into this. In my heart, I thought, what the hell has this got to do with her? The fight is my business, not something for Crystal to get involved in. However, when I spoke, I kept my tone calmer. "It's up to Crystal to decide," I said, revealing no emotion. "Except if she wants to go, she'll go." Crystal stood beside me, still maintaining a gentle smile, but I knew she wasn't comfortable with Hugo's impulsiveness and arrogance. She looked at me, said nothing, just gently placed her hand on my shoulder as if to reassure me. Hugo remained there, chuckling, but I could clearly feel his greed and desire for control. Honestly, he didn't care about me or the fight. What he cared about was making money and the people he could exploit. But anyway, I was stuck in his game, and I had to play by his rules at least for now. Soon enough, that week arrived. We were at the Legacy Arena, a place where the cheers and excitement of the audience enveloped every nook and cranny. I stood in the ring, feeling the beat of my heart blend with the noise of the crowd. Looking up at the stands, I saw thousands of eyes focused on me and my opponent, including countless bettors, each expecting something different from this fight. Up in the high seats, I caught a glimpse of Hugo sitting with Edwin, and beside them, Crystal, my wife, was also watching the fight. Her gaze was as gentle as ever, but I couldn't help but notice Hugo's eyes directed towards her. The clown, not bothering to hide his flirtation, openly flirted with Crystal, laughing and telling cheap jokes, hoping to win her over. Watching that scene, my blood started to boil. He dared to touch Crystal in front of me. As soon as the referee signaled the start of the fight, I was ready, but not just to fight for victory. My opponent this time, a fighter from Malaysia, was heavier than me, his muscles bulging, and he was definitely not easy to knock down. But right now, he was nothing more than a living punching bag for me to release the anger and jealousy boiling inside me. When the fight started, I charged at him like a wild beast. My punches rained down, not giving him time to react. He tried to fight back, using his weight to push me into the corner of the ring, but it was all meaningless to me. In my head, there was only one image: Hugo, with his annoying smile and eyes constantly wandering towards Crystal. I didn't stop attacking. More than 10 minutes passed. The fight stretched tensely, but I wasn't tired. My opponent was heavier, stronger in muscle, but he couldn't keep up with my speed. I knew that just one more decisive punch, and I could knock him out. And then, the opportunity arrived. In a moment of vulnerability, I threw a powerful hook to his jaw, all my strength channeled into that blow. The punch landed perfectly. Ronald staggered, his eyes widening in a moment of surprise. Then his giant body collapsed onto the ring like a building caving in. The entire arena erupted in cheers. I stood there, breathing heavily, looking down at Ronald lying motionless on the floor. The referee rushed in, starting to count. The first didn't need to wait until 10. I knew he was completely knocked out. From the stands, I saw Hugo's face. The smugness and arrogance on his face had vanished, replaced by shock and anger. I couldn't stop the satisfied smile spreading across my lips. He thought I would be crushed, but he was the one humiliated in front of everyone. So the referee raised my hand, declaring victory. This fight wasn't just a title, it was the perfect revenge I had planned for so long. The fight ended in a resounding victory, not only affirming my reputation but also sealing Hugo's fate. His assets, once tied to his bets and profits from the fights, were now wiped out. The clown, with a pale face and panic, would probably have to wander the streets begging or live a homeless life after today. For me, this was a victory not just in the ring, but also the perfect revenge for everything he had done. So the referee handed me the championship belt and the prestigious medal amidst the roaring cheers and applause of the audience. Standing at the peak of glory, under the bright lights of the arena, I felt my heart overflowing with pride. But above all, in this moment, I silently thanked my grandfather, the one who paved the way for me, who taught me resilience and never giving up. Along with that are the people who stood by my side, from the difficult early days to this moment of glory. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, Crystal, my wife, walked onto the ring with a bouquet of flowers in her hand. AICHI came closer, intending to say something to me, her eyes looking at me with anticipation and confusion. But in this moment, I knew that there was nothing left to say between us. Everything had changed, and there was no turning back. I turned to look at Lily, who had stood with me since the days I had to rebuild my reputation. She smiled, stepped forward, and naturally took my arm. In front of all the audience, Lily looked directly at Crystal and said something that set the arena ablaze. "You're no longer anything to Tyler." Crystal, shocked and enraged, couldn't contain her emotions. "You dare have an affair? While I loved you so much," she yelled, her eyes bloodshot with anger. Crystal's accusation hung heavy in the air, echoing through the stadium. The crowd buzzed with shock and disbelief. The newly crowned champion accused of infidelity. The drama was unfolding before their eyes. But before the audience could delve deeper into the scandal, a different kind of surprise erupted. From the roof of the arena, objects began to rain down, like a shower of truth. The objects weren't confetti or petals, but photographs, dozens of them, fluttering and swirling through the air, captivating the crowd's attention. Kelvin and Carl, my loyal boys, had pulled off a masterful operation. They had released the photos I'd prepared earlier, a visual expose of Crystal's true colors. As the photos landed on the ring in the audience, the crowd gasped. Each image revealed a compromising scene between Crystal and Hugo, evidence of their clandestine affair. The crowd was in an uproar as the truth unraveled before their eyes. Crystal stood frozen, her face ashen as she took in the damning evidence. No more hiding, no more excuses. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled, her world shattered into a million pieces. I looked at Crystal, a mixture of anger and relief washing over me. The truth was finally out, and there was nothing left to say. I turned away, taking Lily's hand. We walked away from the chaos, leaving behind the wreckage of a life that Crystal had tried to build. This was the ending I had been waiting for, and it was now complete. As Lily and I exited the stadium, the crowd's roar followed us. They chanted my name, celebrating my victory in the downfall of Hugo. Even amidst the triumphant cheers, a sense of melancholy lingered within me. Crystal's betrayal had left a scar, a reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the lengths people would go to for power and greed. With Lily by my side, I started a new chapter. Our relationship, which began as a shared ambition, blossomed into something deeper, a bond forged through trust and shared victories. We continued to build my career, leveraging my newfound notoriety and Lily's business acumen. We traveled the world, fighting in prestigious arenas and conquering the challenges that came our way. However, the echoes of Crystal's betrayal lingered. It was a constant reminder of the dark side of fame and the consequences of letting greed and ambition control your life. I had learned a hard lesson: trust is a fragile thing, and not everyone has your best interests at heart. One night, as I sat in my luxurious penthouse overlooking the city lights, I couldn't shake off a sense of emptiness. Even with Lily by my side and my career thriving, a part of me still felt incomplete. Perhaps somewhere deep down, I was still searching for the love and loyalty that Crystal had promised but ultimately failed to deliver. With a sigh, I reached for the phone. After a long silence, I dialed a familiar number, my grandpa's. He was the only one who truly understood me, the only one who could offer solace and guidance. "Grandpa," I said, my voice laced with a hint of melancholy, "I've achieved everything I ever wanted. I'm on top of the world, but I still feel empty. What am I missing?" So my grandpa's voice, weathered and wise, filled my ear. "My boy," he said, "sometimes winning isn't everything. You've been focused on your career, your revenge, but have you taken the time to look inside yourself? What truly makes you happy?" His words resonated deep within me, striking a chord of truth. The quest for success had consumed me, leading me down a path of betrayal and hardship. My grandpa reminded me that true happiness comes from within, from the bonds we build and the love we share. He continued, "Tyler, you've faced many battles in the ring, but the toughest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. Find peace, my boy. It's the only true victory." So as I hung up the phone, a wave of clarity washed over me. I had been so focused on external validation, on winning, that I had neglected my own well-being. So my journey had been filled with twists and turns, betrayals and triumphs. I had learned valuable lessons about ambition, loyalty, and the fragile nature of human relationships. But perhaps the greatest lesson was yet to come. My path forward remained unclear, but I knew that I had to start by looking inwards, by seeking peace and understanding within myself. Maybe then I could finally find the happiness and fulfillment I craved. And maybe, just maybe, I could learn to love again without fear or pretense. The journey was far from over, but I was ready to face whatever came next, with a new perspective and a renewed sense of purpose. Well, that was a wild ride, wasn't it? Let me know what you think of Tyler's story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.